Hey everybody, Doug here from 2+ Stuff. I am so excited to be streaming with you right now. Reason I am doing this is because I got a message from a viewer who is actually a trucker going cross country, an 18-wheeler, and they don't always have, obviously, time to read the Warhammer community articles, but they do like it when people talk about them and do YouTube videos because they can stream it as they go. So, Dave, this is for you, my friend. So what we're going to do today in today's video, a few things happened. Last night, the big LVO release, reveal, whatever you want to call it, previews came out from Games Workshop, showing us the next few things for the next couple months, what's going to be happening. In fact, setting the tone kind of for the rest of the year, and we'll talk about that in a second. At the same time, I didn't have a chance to talk about it yesterday because it was my local game night. I'm trying to build a community, so I didn't have time to, I didn't want to skip a night. We're only 3 weeks in, so I decided to come home, wake up first thing in the morning and get this done. And so that is what we're going to do right now. We're going to hop into 3 things today. We're going to talk about the LVO release because it's definitely the most pressing, the biggest news. And then we're going to talk about the endless spells for the Skaven and the Flesh Eater Courts, because just this morning the Flesh Eater Courts one was unveiled to us. So I see the chat's filling up. Go ahead and let me know just if you can hear me and see me and everything is working good. But I'm going to assume everything's good on my end. So we're going to jump into the Las Vegas Open Warhammer Preview 2019. And it's huge. It is a lot of information. I'll show you the 40k stuff at the end, but obviously I'm going to focus on the AOS stuff. It's certainly the things that interest me the most. So let's see here. It kicks off the new edition of Age of Sigmar brought a lot of new tricks to the game, and soon more armies than ever will be able to take full advantage of them. Here, pause with that sentence. Something I've talked about with my friends locally and the R1 guys, Rerolling 1 guys, is the idea that I hope Games Workshop saw value in what they did with 40k, which is, for the first time in 40k, every available army is playing the same edition. Like, all their codexes came out in the same edition. And my thought that I've been telling people is I hope they see the value in that and are doing that to AOS. The pushback being, why should older battle tomes get rewritten when there's still some that are still waiting for their battle tome? I understand, but now that they're completed, all the old 40k armies, I'm hoping that same design unstoppable avalanche power goes to making AOS battle tomes. And so far we've got Gloomspite Gits, Skaven, Flesh Eater Courts, and they announced one more we'll get to in a second. That's 4 by mid-February. I think we're right on track. So, pause there, unpause. They do say new battle tomes for every Grand Alliance. Now, this is really important because last year in 40k, they were like, this is the year of the Xenos, and they immediately released like Custodes or something funny like that. I just think they want to let you know that every faction will be supported in some fashion in 2019, so just brace yourself. That's exciting news. What's interesting about this picture is you see a Stormcast, you see a Fire Slayer behind him. Rune looks like Father with a big latchkey axe. This is a vampire, could definitely be a Soulblight book. This is just the 4 Gods of Chaos, really, really cool. And over here for the destruction side, you see squigs in the back, as well as obviously in the big front, is a giant ogre. So, if this is any indication of what's coming, I'm very much excited. So, okay. They do unveil the next battle tome, what is going to come out after Flesh Eater Courts and Skaven, and it is Blades of Corne. And there's been some pushback, people being like really upset that it's Corne. This would be the 3rd book for Corne. The first one was Corne Bloodbound, which didn't have demons in it. Second one was Blades of Corne, which is where we're currently now, which has demons and mortals. And this would be a 3rd iteration. While I understand it wouldn't have been my pick as the first, I don't know, thing to showcase here, I understand why they want to do it, especially because overall the main narrative of AOS is chaos versus everybody, right? We're all trying to kill chaos, but other people are fighting against each other, death, destruction, order, all that stuff like that, but everyone's really against chaos. And so having those factions be in line, in sync with the design team, their vision for the game and that kind of stuff, I understand. And also, they just released a whole bunch of new Corne models that look fantastic, and people who have those things from Wrath and Rapture are going to be pumped. Would I have liked to see Slaanesh more? Absolutely, but you know what? I'm okay with it. Also, it kind of solidifies the idea that they're going back and redoing Battle Tome. So, I'm happy. Glenn Griffin says it was a mention on Facebook post that those images are just Grand Alliance images and doesn't suggest the future battle tomes. That might very well be fair. However, they also said that the way they recombined factions in the Games Workshop page was just for ease of sales and not indicative of factions. And so far, Skaven and Gloomspite Gits have been sold as those factions. I don't trust anything their Facebook says. Let's see here. The Servants of the Blood God are about to get more lethal. Inside the new battle tome, you'll find ways to customize your Corne Army as never before. Rules for dedicating your collection to a variety of Cornate sub-factions. Okay, so it looks like they're really expanding that idea. There are no sub-factions currently in Corne, but I am excited for there to be different ways of interpreting Corne, right? I think solidifying that is important. So far in the book, it's a lot of like, and they're crazy mad, and these guys are even more mad, and everyone's just mad all the time. You're like, how does this society function? But if you had people who focus on like martial prowess and discipline, you know, just and ways of interpreting that in terms of rules mechanics would be a lot of fun. What's more, Corne armies can look forward to even more new models, hot on the heels of Wrath and Rapture last year, where they redesigned Skulltaker. Skulltaker, the character Herald of Corne. He used to look like he got a discount at Burlington Coat Factory. He has this big old cloak on him, but now he looks baller. He is just a herald raising a sword up high. He's got a cloak covered in skulls. I want to see the 360 of him because I can't quite get a good glimpse of what his shield looks, or whatever he's holding in his hand, but I'm very excited about it. He's not a character that's always like super fascinating me, but I hope they do some stories about him now. All right, so moving into and a host of summoned cornate phenomena. Don't call them quote-unquote endless spells. You'll just make the blood god angry. Instead, these are pure manifestations of Corne's wrath brought into being by brutal clamor of war, and of course, the copious spilling of blood. My thought is they're endless spells that can be summoned with whatever the new interpretation of blood type points is, which I'm okay with. I think that's kind of the thing that Corne needs, is a reimagining of that kind of stuff. Collider115 in the chat says endless prayers. That's exactly what it is. If I pull up the picture here, the one on the left is a super sick looking icon of Corne, which immediately, I don't even care what it does. I want to clip this thing on the left off and put it onto the Bloodsoaked Raiders banner, because it would just give some variety to those models. You can take different banners like that, so that's kind of awesome. In the center is what I think is, in terms of what it actually is, I think probably the most interesting of all the models. It's a skull that's crying blood, and the streams of blood are what's holding it aloft. And then to the right, it looks like a reimagined pendulum, but it is a axe tearing out of what I assume is the realm of chaos. And it is incredible looking. It's exactly what I would imagine it looked like if Corne reached out and smacked something really, really hard. So yeah, we'll skip past those. No ideas on effects. I'm assuming the one on the right, the pendulum one, is very much obviously going to be like the Ether Void pendulum is going to just be a straight damage one. The other two we'll get to when we talk about the Flesh Eater Quartz ones. They're doing a lot of like faction synergy stuff, and I think that's really exciting. So like I would love if, like, you know, any unit who's destroyed within 9 inches of this gets an extra blood type point or something like that. I don't know. I'm just making stuff up. Then we go to this next section here called The Next Chapter in Soul Wars. Age of Sigmar, Forbidden Power. One of the great things about Warhammer Age of Sigmar is the rich, evolving narrative. They basically just kind of recap what happened last year. The Nighthaunt release, Sacrosanct Chamber. Now in 2019, the Soul Wars continue as something ancient and terrible is awakened. And let me just make sure I don't have my volume blaring. Nope, okay. One time I accidentally did this in the stream. I turned the volume up and it was just like a deafening roar. All right, and as a common theme you'll see with all of these is that they don't really show you anything. My assumption is that Forbidden Power is going to be, obviously I think it's a story arc, but it might see the culmination of like new endless spells that work for everyone, which I think would be really, really nice. Yeah, and it shows a lot of gears and cogs and machinations inside the things. I don't know. I'm not quite sure about Forbidden Power. Bill Wilson says, I think Forbidden Power will be malign sorcery expansion with relics, more spells, maybe endless spells, more realm stuff. Yeah, that's kind of my assumption as well. So Really looking forward to that. I mean, heck, if it's a book, anything like Malign Sorcery was really fun. It was a lot of fun. So hopefully and then hopefully they learned from the design ideas and kind of incorporated some ways to make it a little more interesting. Then we go to something called Answer the Call of Chaos. Age of Sigmar War Cry. And again, we have another video that shows us absolutely nothing. But some cool images in the background from the creators of Kill Team and Warhammer Underworld. So these are people who design self-contained skirmish level games of varying types. I would say that Shadespire and Kill Team are very, very different games for sure. Latest year will be taking you to the darkest heart of the mortal realms, beyond death, beyond Sigmar, and beyond sanity. Get ready to play Warhammer Age of Sigmar as you've never seen before in a new game that draws some of the best bits from Underworlds and Kill Team. So, and the last line is, the all points await, are you worthy? So if you don't know, the all points is sort of a little pocket realm that has a gate going to every single one of the other mortal realms. So it's, if you own it, you can kind of get anywhere. It's a huge strategic position. My hope is that it's a skirmish level game where you're fighting over those gates and things like that. So yeah, and it says later this year, so I'm assuming this is not going to see anything of this until like July on. But yeah, I'm really excited about this. I want it to be a Kill Team version. I mean, I've talked about this before, about my disappointment with skirmish, and that it is really great for like, if someone's never touched dice or a model before, of like introducing simple game mechanics, but it gets boring really quickly. But something like for Kill Team, there's a character development system. You can there's a limit on what characters and models can be included, so you have to make hard decisions, not just pick whatever you want and that kind of stuff. I don't know. I think it's very, very enticing. So next down here, again, there's not just this is the second one in a row. There's just no information. They let you know that there's something coming. They show you the preview art, like the logo. That's pretty much it. And then there's Warhammer Underworld's news. Night Vault continues to go from strength to strength, and basically there is a second war band coming for the Sylvaneth, and so this one is all about tree revenants and spite revenants and those dudes, and it looks pretty sick. I'll blow the picture up here, but it looks like you have a lady witch who's probably a spellcaster on the right, a dude with a bow, a guy with a sword, and a guy with a grand axe. So all looking really fantastic looking models. Absolutely love it. And then it goes into 40k stuff, which I'll just show you really briefly. They have some like scout type Primaris Marines, and the chaos stuff is super sick looking. If they had caught me 3 years ago, I would have fallen in love with all of this nasty looking obliterator. That needs a rat ogre conversion, I'll tell you what. Boom. And just a whole bunch of evil looking guys. Gave an update on the Battle Sisters Bulletin. Yep, they kind of updated us on a model they have released for Sisters of Battle. Or not released, but are designing. And then Warhammer Heroes with some awesome familiar names. I'm really happy for all these super folks. If you know any one of them, go make sure they know that they were nominated or not nominated, but won. And go buy them a beer. And his last preview video is about Abaddon from 40k coming back, which we haven't seen the model in totality, but we know it's we know he's been coming for a while. So that is the LVO preview stuff. Absolutely stunning release. Honestly, I feel like this LVO was less about showing you what is literally coming and more about telling you, we have a lot of ideas and visions for the future, and 2019 is going to be awesome. Like, I think that's really what this was. Telling you that every every Grand Alliance getting a battle tome. Clearly, they're going back and redesigning some existing ones with Blades of Corn, starting off there. And then Forbidden Power and Warcry, even though we have no real information about them, like, they're telling us there's something coming, and they gave us enough hints to kind of be like, okay, one is the next arc in this narrative. And the other one is like made by the guys who did Kill Team and stuff like that. So like they tell you enough to get excited, and that's really what I'm interested in. I'm gonna head over the chat here just for a quick second. If anyone has any deep thoughts about these things, I'm gonna just scroll and see some people tag me. Bill Wilson says, I hope they make Corn more broad. I need to pull the band-aid that is the Bloodsoaked Raider big aura. Yeah, so the idea, and I've said this before as well, that I want the Bloodsoaked Raider to be a really cool unit, not an auto-occlude as the first thing you choose when you build a list. Like, so I agree. I tend to agree. I want there to be like more exploration of design space than just the Bloodsoaked Raider as a good starting point. I think Forbidden Power will be Malign Sorcery Expansion with relics, more spells. Yeah, we talked about that. Yep, absolutely. I think the Forbidden Lore Power Expansion isn't spells, but something like, I don't know that word, possibly God Beasts. Okay. Yeah, I mean, well, the thing is, how do you represent a God Beast? Because they would be so colossal that it would be like the size of your apartment. But I know, interesting. It's an interesting idea for sure. Awesome chat about like what it means to have someone or a company that makes Kill Team and Shadespire work. Is there gonna be a deck building element? I hope, frankly, not. But that's okay. Either way, as long as I can do cool stuff like push a flagellant off a wall and he falls and takes damage. Like that was like the great thing about Mordheim is like, take your broken leg test, see if you can pass it. You know, that kind of like in-depth granular stuff. I love that stuff. So we're gonna move into the Skaven Battle Tome, Endless Spells preview, and we got this here. We looked at the units already, but I'll blow them up here. Basically, there's a big base covered in tiny little rats. There is what looks like kind of a doom bell, ethereal doom bell, and then these weird 3 warpstone pylon looking things, and they are interesting rules wise. The first one is Vermintide, which we can all assume is the rats. And they actually gave us the spells early, like the actual cards, so we can look at them, which I really do appreciate. So Vermintide is a predatory spell, moves 7 inches. And let's see here. Cast on a 7, can be set up wholly within 13. That's actually really good for a base this size. We don't have the exact measurements of it, but I remember like the Suffocating Gravetide spell is tricky because it has to be set up within like 4 inches of the caster. So it has to like come out of his pinky toe. So having 13 inches to plop this sucker down, that kind of stuff. So their rules for this sucker are Ravening Horde. After this model has moved, the player that moved it can pick 1 unit in 3 inches of this model and roll 13 dice for each 6 it suffers a mortal wound. In addition, roll 13 dice for each unit it finishes a move or charge move within 3 inches. Basically, if you go anywhere near this thing, you roll 13 dice and any 6 is a mortal wound. It's predatory, so like when you set it up, you get to move with it, which is really cool, because really effectively that means it's a 20 inch range, right? Wholly within 13, then you get to move 7. So that first round, you're being super aggressive with it. What's interesting is that Skaventide, which seems to be the new keyword for Skaven stuff, units are not affected by Ravening Horde. In addition, Skaventide models can move across the model the same manner as if they could fly. Basically, they ignore it. Can't end on it, but that is awesome, because here's what I love about this. And this is going to be a recurring theme when we see the Flesh Eater ones too, is that it plays with the idea that there is a negative to going first, right? Because most predatory on the spells, if the Skaven guy summons it and launches it forward, and then if he goes first the next round, his opponent gets to control the spell, and he throws it right back at him and kicks his teeth in. And that's why, frankly, I don't typically take the big bull endless spell for Beasts of Chaos. But in this sense, it doesn't affect them, so it doesn't really matter. The only thing your opponent's really going to do is move 7 inches to get it away from his guys. But at that point, he's already done something. So, yeah, I don't know. That's really cool. And next is the Warp, Lightning, Vortex. Cast, no, we have not talked about Flesh Eater Quartz 1. I'm going in order, so Flesh Eater Quartz are next. And this is probably one of the most specific endless spells that there has been. So we're going to roll through this. So it consists of 3 models. This is the 3 warpstone pylon looking things. Has a casting value of 8, so pretty high, but I'm pretty sure Skaven are going to have some way of like, eat warpstone and, get casting bonus, that kind of stuff. Only Skaventide wizards can attempt to cast this spell. If cast, set up 1 Warp, Lightning, Vortex model wholly within 26 inches of the caster. Huge range. Then set up the 2nd and 3rd Lightning exactly 7 inches from the first model and exactly 7 inches from each other. These models will form a triangle with each model exactly 7 inches from the other 2 models. What it doesn't say is that those next 2 also have to be wholly within 26 inches of the caster. So it could be you set your first one up 26 inches and then you go an additional, however many inches that is. My Pythagorean theorem is a little bit weak right now, but the geometry game is not on point. But you go that extra distance, putting the other 2 pylons further out, and now you're all within exactly 7. So what you do, based on this picture, it's exactly what it looks like. It's this little triangle. Boop, boop, boop. It is not a very big triangle given the size of these models. 7 inches is not a lot of room when they're like, you know, leeching out the arms that far. When this model is set up, at the end of each movement phase, roll 1 dice for each enemy unit within 6 inches of any of the models from its endless spell. So that's a huge footprint. Add 1 to the dice rolls if that unit is within 6 inches of 2 of the models. Add 2 to the dice rolls instead of 1 if that unit is within 6 inches of all 3. Okay, so basically the more pylons you're near, the more in trouble your opponent is. That stinks. On a 4-up, after all those calculations are done, on a 4-up, that unit suffers D3 mortal wounds. On an unmodified roll of a 6, that unit suffers D6 mortal wounds instead of D3. Okay, so I like that it's unmodified roll of a 6 for that super one. Picture this. So if you take one side of the triangle, right, they have to be 7 inches apart, and it's 6 inches in there. Okay, so if you go across the entire, like, direction of this thing, most likely it's looking at 7 plus 12, 19-inch band. There's like an inch gap in between where the 2 6-inch lines of those things don't meet up, but most units will cover that. So yeah, it's a colossal triangle this is going to be dishing out. The only thing, first of all, I love this. This seems super fun. Units cannot run or fly when they make a normal move that starts within 6 inches of any models from this endless spell. Run or fly. Okay, units cannot run or fly when they make a normal move that starts within 6 inches. Okay, so if you start within 6 inches of that big old footprint, you can't run. That is debilitating. Okay, that's rough. I mean, I'm just trying to think about that. I didn't see that second part. That's huge. So the thing that I'm concerned about with this is that it's going to slow the game down immensely, because if you plop this down on your opponent's army, you have to then roll all those dice for all those units that are affected. And if they clump up, like a lot of armies do, it's rough. The caveat to that is you have to have not only room to... Basically, they have to be set up exactly 7 inches, and if you can't do that, you can't use it. So it does take some finagling, and it is a casting value of 8. This seems so stinking good. It's a lot of mortal wounds. Your opponent's going to have a heck of a time dispelling it because they have to roll a 9. Yeah, that seems really good. I'm not a competitive guy, but I'm just like looking at that. I'm like, just the having movement speed is really a useful tool. Or not, sorry, meaning you can't run or fly. Interesting that they can't fly. So I assume if you could fly, you just can't ignore terrain, that kind of stuff. Interesting stuff. And the last one is Bell of Doom. Let's see here. Bell of Doom is a single model. It is predatory. It can move to 13 inches and can fly. Yeah, when you set it up with the wholly within 13 inches of the caster. And its ability is Apocalyptic Doom. Roll 3d6 after this model is set up or finishes a move. On a roll of a 13, very specific, each unit within 13 inches of this model suffers d3 mortal wounds. That's awesome. And its other ability is Boldness or Despair. Do not take battle shock tests for Scaventide units while they are within 13 inches of this model. Subtract 1 from the bravery characteristic of other units while they are within 13 inches. That is awesome. So, a few things here. If you know the Herdstone, it allows you basically to get some battle shock immunity. But the thing about the Herdstone is you have to be wholly within so many inches of it, and your enemy has to be just within, meaning I have to have my guys closer than my enemy. If I tag one of his models in the unit, the entire unit's debuffed. What's interesting about Boldness and Despair is that it does not say wholly within for giving Scaventide models battle shock. So if you have those big blocks of 60 clan rats, or whatever number they go to, if even one of them has a toe inside that 13-inch bubble, which is huge, the entire unit's battle shock immune, which is awesome. Subtract 1 from the bravery characteristic. So when you take this thing, you're really taking it for the Boldness or Despair, right? Battle shock immunity for your rats, and then -1 bravery for your enemy units, and then the apocalyptic doom. The 3d6 rolling exactly 13 is just a fluffy thing, but battle shock immunity is really stinking good. As someone who, that is the death of my army, Beasts of Chaos, that's why they evaporate, is because of my lack of battle shock manipulation. And these guys are going to be absolutely no different. When you combine the fact that this exists and then the basic Skaven, like every unit of 10 dudes is additional 2 to your bravery. Yeah, that's just a lot of good battle shock stuff on a horde army, so that is incredible. I think so. Like I said, like I know there are people in the chat talking about they don't like this one because the 3d6 roll exactly 13. Here's the thing, that is a fluffy rule in an otherwise amazing spell. This is an incredible game-changing spell. Battle shock immunity on those large horde units is game changer. It's not a fluffy spell. It's an incredible spell with a fluffy side mechanic. So that and it's only a casting value of 6, which means it is easier to unbind. But yeah, I think that's awesome. So that is it for the endless spells, and then we get introduced to the null holes, which actually I didn't see before, to be honest with you. Available at no match play points cost, null holes allow Skaven to deploy where you least expect it, as well as providing an always welcome casting bonus to nearby wizards. So that is the thing. Let's see here. At the start of movement phase, you can use... null holes is a single terrain feature. It is an obstacle. So we saw 3 null holes in the original art, but this is saying it's a single thing. Interesting. The Skaven can move through null holes and invade any corner of the realms. At the start of your movement phase, you can use 1 null hole to transport 1 friendly Scaventide unit. In order to do so, that unit must be wholly within 6 inches of the null hole, which is a limiter for massive hordes. You can get some dudes too, though. And a friendly Scaventide hero must be within 6 inches of the null hole. Okay, so you have to have a hero nearby to make this mechanic work, much like the Herdstone actually has to be nearby to sacrifice Ungor. If this is the case, remove the Scaventide unit from the battlefield and then set it up wholly within 6 inches of another null hole, more than 9 inches from enemy models. It's curious is that it says it doesn't actually point out that I see so far that it's multiple null holes. Maybe the battle tome tells you to deploy 3. That could definitely be it. So, but this is the rules for an individual one. So basically, if you have more than 1 null hole, you can teleport around. That's really cool. Aura of the Horned Rat. What is also interesting is that it has to be within 6 inches of another null hole, which is easy to do because you were already 6 inches of one, but more than 9 inches from enemy models. So if someone goes and sits on that objective or sits on the null hole, you cannot deploy there. And it does count as their move. That's cool. Aura of the Horned Rat. Scaventide units treat this terrain feature as having the Arcane Sorcery rule. Okay, a little buff to Wizard there. It's a minimal one. It's +1 to cast. That's cool. Other units treat this feature as having the Deadly Scenery rule. That's cool. And I love that they actually put the Arcane and Deadly rules in here. I love that they do that. They did it on the Flesh Eater Courts one too, and that's good job, DW. I don't want to have to go through my book. In addition, you can add 1 to the dice to determine if a prayer is answered if the prayer is chanted by a Scaventide priest within 1 inches of a null hole. So not only is it arcane for like Grey Seers and Wizards, but if you want to focus on a Clan Pestilence army, you're not missing out, right? Functionally. +1 to your prayers on a Pestilence thing, as they are now, is incredible. And so I wonder if they're going to keep currently they have a one of their like Uber prayers or poxes or whatever like that, that gives everyone universally a +1 to their prayer. I highly doubt they're going to keep that in there, but if they did, it would be incredible. So yeah, this is incredible. I love, first of all, the way that this is structured. I am a little curious that the battle tome has to explain how many gnaw holes you get. Actually, I'd be really interested if it was gnaw holes based on how big your game was. Like if you're playing a 1,000 point thing, you get 2. If you're a 2,000 point game, you get 3. That'd be kind of fun. But I'm not sure if they'll go that granular. But the idea of having teleportation stuff is quite a bit of fun. This way you can set up, you know, 1 gnaw hole in your area, 2 across the board, and make your opponent like have to make a hard decision about where they want to go. So that sounds really neat. All right. And that is it for the Skaven ones. I'm going to hop into the chat here, and then we're going to dive into the Flesh Eater Courts here. I just want to make sure I don't forget anyone, nothing like that. Let's see here. I know we don't have all the info, but it seemed like it was a huge part of the Flesh Eater Court reveal. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff going on here. Cass says, glad to see your stream on a somewhat more EU-friendly hours. Yes, I wanted to start doing streaming earlier on Fridays. I have Fridays off, and so I think that is a better time for folks over in Europe, because it is evening there. All right. Oh, sorry, you can hear that's my wife vacuuming. Sorry about that. Didn't take very long. Is Endless Prayers accurate, though? We don't actually know the mechanics behind the models. It'll probably be more like Bloodtide related. You talk about the Corn one. Absolutely. They're not spells, and they make that very accurate. And they're not necessarily prayers. That's just kind of a fun, I don't know, colloquialism. It will all in likeliness be... The thing is, like, we're assuming what Blades of Corn does now, plus some extra stuff bolted on, but that's not necessarily true. If they're redesigning the entire Bloodtithe mechanic to work in sync with 2nd edition, you could easily have it be like, you know, 3 Bloodtithe points gets you 1 of those endless spells. So, those kinds of stuff. We'll get to the Chalice of Usharan here in just a second here. And a bunch of debates about the little bell Skaven guys, which I think is just an incredible endless spell. And I'm going to recap here at the end in just a second, talking about the endless spells after we do the Flesh Eater Courts one. So, Carrion Empire and the Flesh Eater Courts Battle Tome will be available to pre-order in mere hours. To tide you over to wait, here we got one more preview, closer look at the endless spells, Flesh Eater Courts, plus the Charnel Throne scenery piece. So they gave us a cool little picture. If you haven't seen it, we got a couple dead horses, we got a chalice, and we got what is probably the coolest gate ever. I kind of want this just to put as a section on like my Garden of Moor set, or Sigmar Mausoleum, I think they rebranded it as. Looks super good. The first one I have is Cadaverous Barricade, which I'm assuming is this wall. Barricade made of cadavers. If you could save your question just for a little bit and then type in question in all caps, that helps me, or type at 2+ stuff, it helps me out just to see them. But Cadaverous Barricade, okay, it's cast on a 5. This is, okay, I'm gonna wax here. Only Nagash, Supreme Lord of Undead and Arborants, can attempt to cast this spell, because we all know how badly Nagash was in need of more spells. He was really hurting. I don't know if you guys have noticed, he's been really like warming the bleacher seats for a while because he just didn't have enough stuff to cast. Anyway, if successfully cast, set up a Cadaverous Barricade wholly within 24 inches of the caster, more than 1 inch from enemy models. A theme that I see amongst these endless spells here compared to older ones is that their casting ranges are far greater. And I think that's because they're realizing nobody wants to cast an endless spell that they can't reach their opponent on turn 1 or 2. And then when you get closer, you could unbind it. Like, this gives you some real oomph to get up there with endless spells. Anyway, so I think that's a design difference that I've noticed with the last few versus some of the earlier editions. The rules for it are Grasping Hands. If a model starts within 3 inches of this model, half the distance that model can move when it makes that move. So if they start their movement within 3 inches of this thing, they half the distance they can move until that next turn. until at least until they're away from it. Death units are not affected by this ability, so the mirror match kind of sucks. And the second part is Grisly Obstacle. When a missile targets a unit that has all of its models within 1 inch of this model, that target receives the benefit of cover if the attacking model is closer to this model than it is to the target. So you throw it at your opponent, it halves their movement distance. It does technically count as your model, so for any rules purposes it does matter. And if you go to shoot at them afterwards, you have a -1 to hit because now they receive the benefit of cover, which sounds like it's kind of working against you. But you have to remember the faction that it's in. Flesh Eater Courts is not renowned for their shooting. All the things that can shoot move incredibly aggressively already. That's not even factoring in the fact they previewed a sub-faction that gives you +2 speed. Like I'm thinking the Crypt Flayers, the Zombie Dragon with the barf and green breath and stuff like that. So like they can literally move to a point where they are closer to the unit that's behind the wall than to the wall, thereby, with the rules as written, negating the cover. So there's no like long rifleman in this faction. As far as its ability, how good it is, if you, depending on the battalions in the army, if you knew that you went first, right, you were a 1-drop army, maybe 2-drop, and you did this to your opponent, 24 inches is, it'll tie up anything on their front line. And for some armies, that is rough. If you're going against Slanesh and they have a big wall of demonettes ready to run and charge, or my Beasts of Chaos, run and charge. If you drop this thing right in front of my gore wall, it hurts because everything gets blocked up behind them. And so, you know, does it do damage? No. Can it gum up the works of infantry heavy horde armies that just want to run to an objective and sit on it like Nurgle demons, backed by like Lord of Blights? Yeah, it'll hurt them really bad because they're already slow. So I think it's one of those endless spells that is depending on your opponent and your skill at mitigating their speed, knowing who needs to be debuffed. I think it has a lot of value. Certainly more than I would say like, yeah, Beta in the comments says, sounds horrible for my grots. Exactly, that's the kind of stuff. So it really depends on what you're facing. If you're facing, well, I can't think of an army it's really bad against, to be honest with you. A Stormcast, because they can just teleport with prayers. Anything that has like alternate deployments, you're right. I do see why it seems bad at first glance. The thing is, anything that can be set up in reserve, like Stormcast, Night Haunt, Blood Tithe summoning stuff, whatever, like it doesn't matter because they'll come down behind it. But for any other army that's just very straightforward, it hurts. Then we go to the Chalice of Ashuron, which Brent from Regolling Ones says is a shout out to Warhammer Fantasy Battles. I don't know. He's your lore guy there. Pardon me, I'm gonna have a sip of coffee. All right. Summon happens on a casting value of 6. The good thing is that you can all take a deep breath because Nagash, Supreme Lord of Undead, knows this spell too. What's actually funny is that based on the model, it's probably about the size of his hand. So I want to see like someone do a conversion where it's like frat boy Nagash with this thing and like Bud Light cans at the bottom of it. Okay. Doing a chalice smash. All right, so casting value of 6, which is awesome. Set it up wholly within 24 inches of the caster. Again, very long range. Keeping that theme up. And its ability is called Soul Stealer. Keep track of the number of models that are slain within 12 inches of this model each turn. Okay, so a little bit of math. You got to keep count. At the end of each turn, roll a dice for each model that was slain within 12 inches of this model during the turn. Okay, so for each dead, you roll a dice. For each 4-up, heal one wound, allocated to one Flesh Eater Courts model within 12 inches of this model, or return one slain model to a Flesh Eater Courts unit with a wounds characteristic of 1 that is wholly within 12 inches of this model. Now I'm going to say it right here. What this is really doing is, to put it simply, you plant this sucker down. Anyone who dies near it, you just keep track of how many bodies die. Doesn't matter, friend or foe. At the, when is it? Keep track for, when do you do it? At the end of each turn, okay? So it works on both y'all's. You roll the dice, the number of how many people died within 12 inches of it. On a 4-up on any of those, you either heal a wound, which is great for crypt horrors, crypt flayers, any of those dudes, all your heroes, or you add a model back to a unit. The only really functionally one wound unit here is the crypt ghouls. And so here's what I will say about this. I think this is one of the coolest endless spells for the sake that it does what the army wants to do. The other ones all have really cool effects. I'm not going to deny that. But what we've seen from the Flesh Eater Quartz previews is like they're an attrition-based army. Adding models back to units, summoning new things onto the table, which we'll get to more on that in a second. And what I love about this one is it's aggressive. 24-inch range on this thing. You can have your wizard in the back. You can throw this sucker halfway up the table, and it's in the fight where all the killing is happening. And it doesn't say by melee attacks. If you're fighting a shooting army and you just run all your guys forward, you plant it near your guys, and when your enemy goes to shoot you, you still get a chance to get those guys back who you lost. It just does what they want to do, but more of it. And so, yeah, it's just so stinking good. And it doesn't seem, I'm trying to think, because you're only getting half back, right? Half the wounds on a bigger guy or half the number of ghouls back on average. It doesn't seem too outrageous. What I do see it as being is like, hey, this is a melee army that doesn't have a whole lot of tricks up its sleeve when it comes to getting guys into combat. Like there's not ridiculous movement. There's not a lot of like save after the save type stuff. Like Nagash can do a whole bunch of those, modifying, nothing like that. But this is saying that when we deliver your army to the enemy, you're going to lose a bunch of them on the way in, but you'll at least get like half of those guys back that you lost. So that's kind of awesome. Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to think, like, playing against Jack's shootcast army, he'll just delete almost your entire army, and the next chance you get a chance to get half your army back. But that one is solid. I really do like it. I do like that even though Nagash can use it, it's very specific about Flesh Eater Quartz models. So I assume when the Battle Tome comes out, they're going to probably include him a bit more, which I wanted. I've said that multiple times. I want them to really dive into Nagash in a lore-friendly way. But this would be a really cool way to be like, hey, Nagash is going to lead this thing because this particular Ghoul King sees him as God or King or something. And so he has the spell, but is very limited to them only. So, yeah. Let's see here. Old Witch Doctor says, so basically from now on, you want to absolutely sure that you kill the unit to ensure they don't come back. Sort of. You kill the unit so that they don't come back. You can't add models back to that unit. You are correct. But let's say you killed 10 crypt ghouls, right? You deleted that unit. I can't add any more to that, but I still have 10 of this soul stealer quote-unquote resource. I can heal wounds on something else that you didn't kill or add models to another unit. Okay, so return one slain model. Okay, so you can't add above your starting value, but you can heal stuff up from things that you didn't kill, which is kind of nice. There's a lot of flexibility in that. It does have a lot more diminishing returns when you talk about crypt horrors, right? Because if you kill one crypt horror, you can either heal a wound on another crypt horror, or you can get one ghoul back, and that's just not. That is a diminishing return. Let's see here. We have corpsemere stampede. This is the horses coming out of the ground. It's a single model, predatory, awesome. It can move up to 14 inches and can fly. Can someone correct me? What is the longest range on a predatory spell? 14 is the highest that I can think of. 12, I think, is the next biggest one. I'm not quite sure. Let's see here. Casting value of 7. Okay. And okay, this is funny. If cast, set up the corpsemere stampede wholly within 3d6 of the caster. So a little bit of randomness there. Anywhere between 3 and 18 inches. So on averages, you're looking at what? Like 9 inches or something like that. But then he has a 14-inch move on top of that. Okay. That's pretty cool. I dig it. I'm not sure why there had to be a 3d6 there, But when this model is set up, the player who set it up can immediately make a move with it. Nice. Okay. This model... Okay, after this model has moved, roll 5 dice for each unit that has any models it passed across. For each roll that is more than that unit's wound characteristic, that unit suffers a mortal wound. For each roll of a 6, that unit suffers D3 mortal wounds instead, whatever its wound characteristic is. Okay. So, this is an interesting one. It is kind of more of a base predatory one. It's not my favorite on the get-go, unless someone can point out something that I'm missing. It is very fast. It is very aggressive. It can come back and hit you, which is a little bit different from some of the other ones. Like most of these endless spells that we've looked at today for Skaven and Flesh Eater Courts, they either ignore the faction that cast them, or they don't hurt your enemy. They just kind of buff you up. Or they're not predatory. Yeah, so that's interesting. So this one can come back and hit you. It will be deadly against Crypt Ghouls if they get a chance to use it. So you roll 5 dice for each unit. With that kind of speed, 14 inches, you can cross 2 or 3 units because you only need to clip 1 guy. 5 dice. So I don't know, say Liberators. It's kind of a good baseline. Or Sequitors now because who plays Liberators? That was a joke. So it'd be like kind of 2 up, right? It's more than that unit's wound characteristic. Okay, so it had to be a 3. Suffers 1 mortal wound for each roll of a 6. So even if you tag something really big, you go across a beast or something like that, there's still always a chance you're going to do something, because if you roll at 6, it does D3 mortal wounds. I wouldn't bank on it, but there's no reason to ignore going over a large creature just to not do that. You know what I mean? So that's kind of cool. Cass said he said that one was rather strong. It definitely could be. I mean, I see the potential in it because the Gorgon from Beasts of Chaos has the rule called Eat Whole, which is roll a die if it's equal to or greater than the enemy's wound characteristic. You just eat them whole. And so I do see the value in that. It is definitely good against chaff. It has uses against everything. Just throw that out there. But yeah, it's cool stuff. The fact that you roll 5 dice no matter what size you roll across, even if you like, you know, do the serpentine motion across your entire enemy's army. Yeah, I don't know. Steve Keene asks, is that the first horse model put out since AOS began? What about the Varangard? They're all riding horses. Let's see here. We'll go down. The Charnel Throne. Okay, this is their terrain piece. Although he's kind of right. There are not many horses in AOS. They have been... our horse stables have been deficient, but these are really awesome looking ones. Technically, also, some of the Dreadblade Harrow's leaders are on ethereal horses, if that counts too. Okay. Eternal Throne is a single terrain feature. Let's see. So I'm assuming this is gonna be the same thing as like once you've chosen sides, then you set up the thing. That's kind of what the Hearthstone is. Ghoulish Landmark. Flesh Eater Core units treat this terrain as having the inspiring scenery roll. +1 bravery is always good. I'm not sure how bravery, like what their bravery is going to be in this army, so that could be a really important thing. All other units treat this terrain feature as having the sinister scenery roll. Now again, they print them right here, inspiring sinister. You do have to be within 1 inch. So they're not huge, you know what I mean? If you're defending the throne room, that's kind of cool. Ruler of all that he surveys is the rule here. An Arborant Archregent, so it's very specific to the hero that comes in, what is it? The Carrion box, Carrion Empire, which is a good incentive for, I guess, for you to buy that. That is within 1 inch of this terrain feature, can use the Summon Imperial Guard ability without a command point being spent. So that means you can summon stuff without spending resources. That is huge. Let me process that one. We've gotten, they've mentioned the Imperial Guard thing, being able to bring stuff to the table. We don't have specifics on that necessarily. In addition to an Arborant Ghoul King, So it's a normal Ghoul King that is with 1 inch of this train feature can use the Summon Men at Arms command ability without summoning command point. I believe that one is just bringing Corrupt Ghouls as it is, but again, all these things are subject to change. We don't know what they're rewriting them as. So that is very interesting. So it is a terrain piece that allows you to summon things in literally for free, not in the like quote unquote free that all the demon codexes have. This is actual free. Okay, that is crazy. Of course, they're gonna have to write in their own restrictions on like where those units deploy. You know, I'm sure that I have no doubt there's going to be some pretty hefty balancing factors based around that, as well as the units you can get. We're assuming that they're using the old Imperial Guard and Men-at-Arms thing, and that's just not fair to assume. So that is really, really cool. And that is pretty much it. So that is the endless spells and terrain for both Skaven and Flesh Eater Courts. So kind of my thoughts here. First of all, I like everything we saw. Recapping the Skaven, I thought the knot are cool. I like that they just kind of mentioned, I wonder if you'll be able to deploy from them, because it says allow Skaven to deploy, and the only thing it describes in this thing is teleportation. So that's kind of interesting. And then as far as the Bell of Doom, I think the Bell of Doom is going to be a take every single time. No question asked. Warp Lightning Vortex, I think when you're able to get it to go off, this is the one with the 3 pylons, when it works, and you have the perfect triangle that you need to make it work, it will be devastating, because this is the one where I could see it being a not fun thing. And this is what I mean by this. You're taking so much time to roll one of these dice for every single one of these units that gets affected by this, as well as you're making them go so much slower because they can't run, which can just make a game very grindy. Again, this is one I want to see in practice. How often does it actually go off? Its casting value is pretty high. Even if they do have some kind of boosting ability to their thing, usually Skaven are like, you can try to do this, but there's a chance to hurt yourself, so maybe your wizard will burn out trying to do it. I want to see that one be used before I make a full assessment, but and vermintide, I don't particularly care for. It's not my thing. I'm not a big fan of predatory ones, but a bunch of little rats is kind of a fun idea. The Bell of Doom, I think, is the all-star of the Skaven ones, and the Gnawholes seem super stinking cool. Moving on to Flesh Eater Courts, that's kind of a 30,000-foot view. I love the barricade. I love the chalice. I think the chalice is my favorite of all of these endless spells we've seen, all 6 of them, because it just does what the faction wants to do on top of it. It is like the highest level of synergy that I think I've seen Endless Spell have. Yeah. And then the Stampede is not my favorite thing, but there are far worse, I will say, far worse predatory spells. So, yeah. Oh, and the throne thing, I want to see this in the throne's balance, I think highly revolves around what the specifics are on bringing units in the new book, as well as what units you can bring in. So this is just one. I'm going to put a pin in it and just keep an eye on that when the battle tome drops. But yeah, so I'm very excited. So I'm going to hop over to the chat. I'm just going to answer some questions here. If you have a question for me, either say @2plustuff or write question in all caps so I can kind of see it. There's a lot of people chatting with each other, which I love. I do encourage. I just don't want to miss anything. Steve Keen, question. Is this the first horse model? Oh, nope, we put that one to rest. Okay. Rob Liefeld, I believe. So who got the better release if you had to pick a winner, Flesh Eater Courts or Skaven? Well, at this point, I don't have either book. I think Flesh Eater Courts got the better facelift in terms of they just seem very interesting. And the fact that there's Endless Spells synergize so stinking well, and the terrain piece with what they want to do as an attrition-focused army is astounding. Now, the caveat to that is there's still a very limited model range, whereas the Skaven release has so much going for it because we haven't explored all of the different clan rules. We have no idea what some of them do. And the fact that you much like with all the sub-factions of like Beast of Chaos and Gloomspite, you all get them all the time. If you have one Molder guy, he gets the Molder rules, is really exciting. And so I think it's hard. So I always kind of try to look at things from like a new person perspective as well as an existing player. New player perspective, Flesh Eater Courts wins hands down because it's the most simple, straightforward. You kind of have to pay a lot because you need a lot of dudes. You're going to be summoning stuff. I mean, if go out and buy 12 start collecting boxes and you have your entire Flesh Eater Courts army. But it's very, I think, much more straightforward. Whereas the Skaven stuff, there's so much diversity in mechanics because there's so many more units. I think that's one that it's going to take a lot of time to really unpack to see how truly good it is. Much like I think right now people are unpacking Gloomspite Gits. There's so much there. It just takes time for like better players than I to come in and be like, this works in certain situations, you know, and then there's a whole flavor, people who just play what they like. Yeah. My personal pick, just based on aesthetics, though, I like the Flesh Eater Courts more than the Skaven. I dig it. I think, so like, here's the interesting though, for both of these. Here's what I love. The endless spells for Beast of Chaos, I have not bought yet because I don't care about any of them. But these, I can't fathom being a Flesh Eater Courts player and not getting these endless spells. That chalice is amazing. The gate is amazing. The horse, take it or leave it. I don't care. You bought it. You might as well use it. You know, maybe if you take all of them, it's the same points as a start collecting box. Don't, you know, just save yourself a couple bucks. And then Skaven stuff, like the knot holes are awesome. The vermintide's cool. And the Bella Doom, I think, is the all-star. I think the Flesh Eater Courts is, without a question to me, the best endless spell set because it does the widest variety of things. You have a wall, you have an aggressive predatory spell, and you have a faction synergistic buffing one. They all do what they want to do. So I think the Flesh Eater Courts wins, in my opinion, based solely on what we've seen in the previews. That's my asterisk. Let's see here. However, when they say it's free, it's probably still a one-use command ability. They just have it built in as far as we know, so I'm not quite sure. Yeah, we're discussing the, a few people were talking about the trade-off of a truly free unit being brought in with no command points. But like I said, I do think it's going to revolve around the requirements on deployment. Do they have to be near a hero? Do they obviously have to be outside 9? That's a pretty standard one, but do they come from the board edge? You know what I mean? There's a lot of things. Let's see here. Lord Balzac. Am I the one who realizes that Flesh Eater Courts are returning from the old world? Nope, that rumor's been around since the book came out like 3 years ago. They are technically not Bretonnians because there is no Bretonnia. But they do see themselves as an Arthurian legend type, but they don't necessarily, nothing has directly tied them to these specific people that were in the old world yet. That might happen in the new book. I really am hoping to get some new lore, so probably not enough to do an entire Flesh Eater Courts week again, but I definitely want to do 1 or 2 videos, bring them up to speed, and I'll just throw it in that playlist. And let's see, Glenn Griffin. Doug, what are you working on for AOS right now, and do you have any inkling to start a new AOS army? Also, do you think Dark Oath are still going to get a battle tome? Well, I can answer one of those. I went out and got a whole bunch of Carriage and Overlords last night from a buddy who was getting rid of them. And basically, it's more of a painting project right now. I need to stop painting Beastman skin for a little while. I'm getting pretty burnt out. I think I did 70 models for them, like in like a 3 to 4 week period. And now I'm just like, I need a break. And so I'm gonna go paint some medals for a while. Also, your second question, do I think Dark Oath are still going to get a battle tome? Yes, probably not for a little while. I don't see that being a huge priority for their release team quite yet. Maybe later in the year. Let's see here. Kissmelm Tweak. It's an awesome username. Thoughts on Corne getting endless spells, in quotes. As a Corne player, I'm skeptical about the lore aspect unless it's like a physical version of a Blood Tithe. That's actually kind of what I think it is. The big axe one that we saw, which, oh, I closed out of it, I'm sorry. It looks like things tearing through the realm of chaos, which would be, it fits in with what Bloodtithe are supposed to be like. The amount of carnage brings things from the realm of chaos. And that's exactly how I think they're going to justify that. I don't think they're magic in the typical sense. What I am curious about is if they can be unbound like normal endless spells. That is an interesting thing. Yeah. Flesh Eater Quartz has a bald vampire cannibal in a loincloth. Corne just has regular cannibals in loincloths. That's absolutely true. That is the point in the Flesh Eater Quartz favor. Do you like the ghoul models? Do you want to paint a whole lot of them? If not, Flesh Eater Quartz. Yeah, for me, I don't like the ghouls so much, but I love the crypt horrors and crypt flares, the big guys. And I hope that there are battalions and builds that allow that to be a really fully realized army. Obviously, I think ghouls are important for holding objectives and that kind of stuff, but I'm much more interested in the big dudes. Do you have any games planned for this weekend? What kind of lists will you be bringing? I actually just had my game night last night, and this weekend in Seattle area, which is where I live, we are facing a snowpocalypse. Everything's kind of getting... The reason I started at 11 rather than like 9, where I wanted to start this morning, was because we went out shopping and stocked up basically for about 4 or 5 days because it's supposed to get rough. So no games this weekend, but I had one of the best games ever last night, and I'll talk about that. I want to do a video talking about building local communities, and actually one of my awesome patrons who doesn't live far, lives like an hour and a half north, came down for game night just randomly, and got a game with him, and it was absolutely brutal. It was Corne versus my Beast of Chaos, and we had such a good time. It was like the best game ever because it swung so heavy, and I'll talk about that later. Alex, I just got here. Thoughts on Warcry Kill Team in AOS? We know nothing about it, but I'm excited for the idea of a skirmish level game with a real campaign system is what I want. Also, what do you think they mean by battle tomes for every Grand Alliance? I think in 2019, every faction will receive something. My guess, I don't want to say predictions because it's not really a prediction. It is a wild guess, speculation, is probably some kind of ogre book. Obviously they announced Blades of Corn for Chaos. I'd love to see a new KO book, not just because I described a bunch, but because I love the models and the KO players. It needs to be brought in. And then what's on Destruction? I don't know what they would do for Destruction. That'd be kind of cool. Probably a new Iron Jaws book if they're going backwards and re-updating them. Also, do you think there is a new Stormcast chamber? Oh, my friend, I think there is always a new Stormcast chamber. When you think you've seen them all, you haven't. Are you getting weak already? Will you betray the Beast of Chaos for Quartz? No, they had a chance to. Jack from Rolling Ones was interested kind of in the KO for a brief moment, and we were like, maybe we'll trade the KO for the Flesh Eater Quartz, and then he's like, no, I'm kind of interested in them. So I was like, that's cool. I'm going to paint some metal. So no, I'm not weak for him yet. I am getting the battle tome, and I'll enjoy reading about him, but nah. Do you think do you think the new Skaven model will come out by itself at some point? Probably not for a long while. Their kind of thing they've been doing with a lot of these kits, these big super kits, has been it'll be out there for a couple months and then it'll go away, and then the heroes or anything unique in them comes out like in a blister. Let's see here. Dark Oath might get a battle tome after the new Stormcast tome. That would actually be... I wouldn't mind it if the new iteration, like after... Right now it's... you know the Blight War set that was like Stormcast versus Nurgle? Even though that wasn't necessarily like the starter set, it was just a good box set. I wouldn't be surprised if they did something like that with like Stormcast and then a whole bunch of Slaves to Darkness and Dark Oath stuff mixed together. That'd be kind of cool. The Chalice alone makes me think they are reincarnated Bretonnians. Talking about the Chalice for the Flesh Eater Quartz. Yeah, I mean, they use a lot of the same imagery. Absolutely. But it's hard because, like, Bretonnians are just based on a classic trope, and so are these. So they seem similar, but they're not necessarily tied to one another. Kiss Malmtweak doesn't live far, like an hour and a half away. Hour and a half is literally halfway across my country. That's really funny. I mean, I live in Seattle, so traffic conditions, that probably means like 25 miles. Let's see here. Bit off topic. Do you think They're following the Stormcast model for Primaris. Vanguard Marines seem like a new chamber. Yeah, I mean, they are. They are. So you're asking, like, yeah, they start with a core thing. So the core thing for AOS was Liberators, Judicators, Retributors, excuse me, and then a couple heroes. And then they just keep building on that in wave after wave. So now Primaris had their base dudes. Then they got dudes with bigger guns. And then they got dudes who can be scouts. You know, and they're doing the exact same thing. It's how they roll out factions now, it looks like. So, yeah. That is it for that. All right. Let's see here. They mentioned, and something ancient and terrible is awakened in the next Chamber of Soul Wars. Guesses on what that could be. Something ancient and terrible is awakened. Well, Chaos Gods were without time, so it could be Slaanesh. Also, it ties in with the word forbidden. But we're not really sure if he's asleep to be awakened. I am not quite sure. Something ancient and terrible is awakened. I'm not quite sure. Ancient and terrible. I can't think of many things that are discussed in the lore that are described as ancient, like truly ancient. I wouldn't be surprised if it was something new. Someone had mentioned earlier in the chat that it was like maybe a god beast, and that would be interesting. I just want to know how you would put that out rules-wise. Memes say that Sigmar has Cetra imprisoned and will let him go. That would be the coolest thing. Like the actual coolest thing if Cetra was let go. If you don't know, Cetra was leader of the Tomb Kings, an old faction from Warhammer Fantasy Battles, and he got royally screwed by Nagash, who basically took over his entire army and became Lord of Death in the end times and until now. But the idea of a death faction that rails against Nagash sounds awesome. Absolutely. Or a death-ish faction, because he's basically a skeleton guy. He's a glorified skeleton guy, but yeah. More Beastman models would be cool in my opinion. Would not entirely fit with Awakening. No, I'm not talking about Beastman. I mean, not Beastmen. What was I thinking of? Whatever the God Beasts. That's what I meant. Not Beastmen, like the faction Beasts of Chaos, but like God Beasts of these colossal Titan monsters the size of cities and stuff like that. They would be ancient and terrible for sure. Let's see. Gloomspites is the destruction book for the year. Skaven is the chaos book. That's not necessarily true. I mean, they're saying this afterwards, so I'm sure there'll be more. Like I said, I really want them to focus their design power on these armies, just as they did for getting all the factions for 40k on the same edition before. So I think it will be just fine. I think there's a lot more coming, to be honest with you. I'm very excited. We're only like the 8th of February, and we've already got, what, 4 books on the horizon? We got Gloomspite, we got Skaven, Flesh-Eater Courts, and Corne already announced. So that's huge. I absolutely love it. So, friends, thank you so much. It's been an hour now. We went through all the new stuff. I will keep you updated as far as anything new we hear, and I'm very excited about that. What I will say is this coming week's probably going to be, I'm going to do some lore videos, answer some patron questions, things like that, because I'm hoping to get my books soon and just kind of dive into them. So when I do lore week for Skaven, it'll blow your mind. That's the kind of thing. I'm doing Skaven first because Flesh-Eater Courts already has a Flesh-Eater Courts week. But yeah, so thank you all so much. I will try and do, excuse me, streams a little bit earlier in the day on Friday so I can catch some people up over in Europe. So if that works for you, thank you so much for tuning in, and I will talk to you all very, very soon. Later.